What's going on, everybody? This is Clint with the Die Hard MMA podcast. This podcast was filmed exclusively for odds.com. Be sure to click the link below. Check it out. We've got everything that you need over there. We've got you covered for every sport. Thank you so much for the support and good luck on all your action this week. James, talk to me about the main event of UFC Vegas 19.
So rebooked, obviously. This fight was supposed to take place in December. Blaydes gets COVID. Actually ended up having to drive back to Denver because he didn't want to get noticed at the airport because of all the COVID stuff and obviously the worry of COVID as well. So imagine that. You not only don't get to fight, you've got COVID and you got to drive from Vegas to Colorado. That's not an easy drive. So I just wanted to point that out. Glad they rebooked it, though. This makes a lot of sense for the division right here, right? They're both highly ranked in terms of their rankings and all that. I mean, I've said this when this matchup was announced. I thought this fight would never happen for this exact reason. This is not a good fight for Derrick Lewis. Curtis Blaydes, 29 years old, 6'4" with an 80-inch reach, fighting Derrick Lewis, who's 6'3" with a 79-inch reach. It's very rare that Lewis is a smaller guy in the heavyweight division. Blaydes is a little bit bigger, not by much, but Blaydes is an athlete. We've seen the evolution in his career just with him, starting off, having that debut against Francis Ngannou to seeing just even physically, you look at him now, he looks in way better shape than he was before. He's like a true athlete when it comes to what he brings to the table here. Now, look, one thing I always rant about, and I'm going to rant on it here, is people calling Curtis Blaydes boring. I don't get it. He fought a guy in Volkov in his last fight who is very tough to finish. Derrick Lewis knows that because he knocked him out at the very last second in their fight a couple of years ago. And yeah, he didn't get it done, but most of Curtis Blaydes' fights do end in that sort of TKO type position where it's either on the ground and pound, or it's in the case of JDS, who's knees and punches. But this is a guy that does try and finish fights. It's just, he's been labeled boring by Dana White, so everyone runs with it. He's not a boring fighter. Tough competition. Like I said, his kryptonite is Francis Ngannou. We know this. He's tried it twice. He's been knocked out twice. The first time was in the second round. The second time was in the first round. So he knows what to expect here, and I think that's actually good for him in this fight because he's not going to try and mess around with Derrick Lewis. He's going to try and take him to the ground. He's going to try to out wrestle him, outpace him. And I just think it's a bad style matchup for Derrick Lewis because I want to point something out, and I'm going to get a lot of flack for saying this, but Derrick Lewis is not Francis Ngannou. Like, I don't know why people try and equate the two. I think Ngannou, yes, they fought, and yes, Lewis has a win over him, but I think in general, Ngannou, in my opinion, hits harder than Lewis, and I think he's a little bit more mobile than Lewis is in terms of what he can do in his movement in the cage. Lewis is a very, powerful guy, but he's not a guy that's, going to like out hustle a Curtis Blaydes in this fight. So, yeah, Curtis Blaydes, very steep. He's the biggest favorite on the card. He's minus 400. Is that a bit too steep? Honestly, I don't think it is. I think it's a bad style matchup for Lewis's only way to win this fight is if he knocks out Blaydes, and I think it's got to be early. And I think Blaydes knows that. I think he's not going to mess around in the stand-up in that first round. You remember with JDS, he had trouble getting JDS to the ground early on. He's like, okay, we'll just stand and strike. But even then, that was when he figured that out, I think, kind of in the second round. I think with Lewis, it won't even matter. He's going to be way faster, way more mobile. He's going to neutralize a lot of those weapons from Derrick Lewis. So I like Blaydes here, and I think Blaydes finishes this fight. I do. Whether he does, it's later in the fight, but you can get Blaydes right now inside the distance at minus 180. I think that's a little bit better. I see this is a 5-round fight, right? So that leads to more opportunities for him to go out there and get the finish. I know he didn't finish Volkov, but I think with Lewis, yeah, he's losing weight and maybe his cardio will be better for this fight. But typically, I just don't see Derrick Lewis going late into this fight, right? And that's where Blaydes, he had the cardio issues against Volkov. People noted that where he was tired. I think he's fixed that. I think he knows that he's not just going to go out there and finish Derrick Lewis early on. He's got to go out there. And I think there's part of Blaydes that's kind of pissed off at everyone being like, look, like you guys call me boring. Have you watched all my fights? It's like people calling Izzy boring when he fought Romero and then he puts on a great performance against Costa. I digress though. But yeah, if you want to check out my interview with Blaydes, talk to him on the channel there. Good insight into COVID. Didn't really have any bad symptoms or anything like that. But I just think this is a bad style matchup for Derrick Lewis. Clint, what do you think?
I'm right there with you, James. I'm absolutely right there with you. It's not often that me, the dog catcher, looks at a minus 400 line and goes, yeah, that's about right. I always look to make a side for the dog. I always want to back the dog here. But Blaydes, he's 29 years old, man. He is just coming into his prime as a fighter. And like you said, Francis Ngannou is his kryptonite. That's the only guy that's been able to stop the onslaught of Curtis Blaydes. And let me tell you something, James. Francis Ngannou has 2 knockout wins over Curtis Blaydes. Blaydes didn't go unconscious in either of those.
Yeah.
Usually when you see Francis Ngannou hit somebody, they're dead on arrival. Like the Alistair Overeem knockout. He didn't wake up for 2 weeks. When he hit Curtis Blaydes, the referee stepped in and waved it off. He wasn't out. He was still trying to be in that fight. And that tells me something about the chin and durability of Curtis Blaydes. It's next level. It's something that we haven't seen before. Derrick Lewis does not hit as hard as Francis Ngannou does. Can he knock anybody out at heavyweight? Yeah, he probably can. He hits hard. I'm not saying he doesn't hit hard, but he's not on Ngannou's level. And on top of that, he's 36 years old. He's had back problems. He's had surgeries. He's talked about getting in shape. He's talked about working on his wrestling. He's talked about losing weight. He hasn't done any of those things. And he's now 36 years old and back in a potential title picture type of situation. He's going to get handled. He got handled by Daniel Cormier, who's a much smaller version of Derrick Lewis. I'm sorry, of Curtis Blaydes.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Yeah.
No
He's a much smaller version of Curtis Blaydes. And Blaydes is a guy that's perfect at the all-in and all-out, James. He will stay at range where a guy like Derrick Lewis can't hit him, and then he will close that distance, and if he has to, he will go Tony Ferguson on Derrick Lewis's ass and ankle pick him to get him to the floor. Like, he'll do whatever it takes to close that distance safely. With the small cage and heavyweights, he doesn't have a lot of room to cover. He'll be able to eat maybe one shot and then get the distance closed and get Derrick Lewis up against the fence, and once it's there, it's over. Derrick Lewis doesn't have takedown defense. Derrick Lewis has what I like to call the fuck you get up game. He bench presses 265-pound men off of his chest and just stands up whenever he wants to. That's how Derrick Lewis gets back to the feet after being taken down. You're not doing that to Curtis Blaydes. Curtis Blaydes knows all about wrestling positioning. He's going to be chest to chest. They describe it like you've got a pole going through your chest, your rib cage, through your opponents. That's how you're heavy on top. That's exactly what Curtis Blaydes does. And then the thing that he does that's even worse than that is he lets people get the feeling that they might get back up. And as soon as they expend all that energy to get back to where they've got 1 foot underneath them, he mat returns them. He's got the most ferocious chain wrestling grappling the heavyweight division has ever seen. He's like Khabib. He mixes in takedowns, 1 leg, 2 legs, trips, throws. Like, Curtis Blaydes can do it all to get his opponents to the ground. You can defend one, but you're not going to defend the second. If you can defend the second, you're not defending the third. And I can go on that for about maybe the 6 or 7 different takedown. He will eventually get you to the floor. Curtis Blaydes is going to break Derrick Lewis. Now, I don't know how or when he finishes this fight, but Derrick Lewis is a guy that's really, really hard to put away. He's been knocked out 4 times, but he's another one of these guys that doesn't really go unconscious. He kind of gets waved off. He got knocked out by Mark Hunt. That was all the way in the 4th round after just being exhausted and not being able to continue. He got submitted by Daniel Cormier, and that's kind of where I see maybe this taking place. Maybe Curtis Blaydes actually submits somebody instead of TKOing them because Derrick Lewis is just so hard to get out of there. What I like here, it's chalky now. I tweeted it out earlier, the over 1.5, James. I think Blaydes takes his time. I think he drags Derrick Lewis into the late rounds and then he puts him away. And you best believe I will be sprinkling the rounds 3, 4, and 5 props on Curtis Blaydes because I think Derrick Lewis will hang in there and I think Blaydes will take his time. And it'll be because Derrick Lewis is tired of being on his back that he finally caves and allows Curtis Blaydes to get a dominant position where he can finish and get the fight waved off. I don't see anything besides a banana peel slip for Blaydes for Derrick Lewis to win this. I mean, if you want a puncher's chance, he's got a puncher's chance, but that's all he's got here.
I agree. And one more thing that kind of ties to what you're saying about the Ngannou loss is I see a lot of people when they see Curtis Blaydes and they see him doing interviews, they talk about his speech, right? And people say that, oh, he's got CTE and all this stuff. I did an interview with Curtis Blaydes back in 2016. Okay. You can find it on my channel, youtube.com/LinksOnSports. It was before the Luis Cortez fight for RFA. He's stuttering in that. He's always had a stutter. So people get that confused with thinking he's got CTE because of the Ngannou fight. Oh my God, Ngannou put him into another dimension. I'm glad you brought that up about the TKO things because he was still, like you said, he wasn't a clean, like unconscious knockout. He got hit, he lost the fight, but that's something that's there's 2 false narratives about Curtis Blaydes. Number 1, that he's a boring fighter. Number 2 is that he has CTE. Like, come on, people, go do your research. Go look at that interview. He's stuttering in that interview and he hadn't had a single loss at that point. So just wanted to mention that as well because I think that there's a lot of people there have the wrong idea. And I'm not saying that because I'm trying to be Curtis's boy or anything, but I see a lot of people saying like, oh, he's got CTE. It's not the case. So, and yeah, I totally agree with your assessment there.
That's a great point. That's a fantastic point, and people need to know that for sure. He's got a speech impediment. It's definitely not something tied to, a war or something like that in the octagon. And he's highly intelligent. You know, if you listen to how this guy talks, he knows what he's doing. And betting on smart fighters is something that I really like to take advantage of. He knows exactly what he's doing in there. He knows exactly what his path to victory is inside the cage. And because of that, I think he's one of the best fighters you can possibly put your money on, because until he fights Francis Ngannou, he's gonna find a way to win. I like Curtis Blaydes here. I like him a lot. I like that over 1.5. I might even like the over 2.5 if that's where this thing goes, because the over 1.5 opened up about -135. If you got in early, you're lucky. It's about -170 now. They might move that thing to a 2.5, and I'd be tempted to take that as well. But I think Curtis Blaydes probably finishes this fight in the 4th round. And we talked about the gas tanks. Curtis Blaydes uses his gas tank as a weapon, James. He is more than willing to go 25 minutes. Derrick Lewis is not. Derrick Lewis can go 15. Derrick Lewis struggles in the 3rd round. He's not going 20. He's not going 25. He just doesn't have it in him. So I see a late finish for Curtis Blaydes. That's my parlay. That's my big bet for the week, is Ketlen Vieira tied to Curtis Blaydes. And I think that's a spot that I just love. It comes out to about -140 now. I got in a little bit early. I think I got -133. So it should be -140, -145. So you got to lay a little bit of chalk. But honestly, it's one of those spots where I see very limited opportunity for the opponents to crack that one.
I like it. I dig it for sure. Might even do that one myself. So there you go.
There you go.